Thank you, Professor Kawashima, and thank you also for inviting us and giving the opportunity to present the findings on online cultural engagement and generative AI. The findings refer to the UK. I am delighted to give this presentation also as part of the Sustainable Cultural Future team led by Professor Ye-Kyung Lee. And so today we will, as I just said, we will present evidence from the UK regarding individuals' engagement with online culture, which will make part of the first part of the presentation, whereas in the second part we will provide insights around the use in the UK, the way in which UK individuals engage with the generative AI. We will mostly cover in part one the wider engagement with online culture by UK individuals, and as well as their perceptions around creativity, around digital skills, as well as wider opinion on the impact of online culture, on the societal impact of online culture. In part two, we will try to understand the ways in which UK individuals engage with generative AI when it comes to culture. And again, we'll try to uncover more details regarding their perceptions with this novel tool. And before getting started with part one, I think it could be helpful to provide a portrayal of the characteristics of the individuals participating in this survey. These are individuals that are representative of the UK population engaging with online culture. And in particular, the survey participants are slightly more than 3,000, and they are slightly more or less equally split when it comes to gender, although the female representation is slightly larger. And we see that about half of the participants are younger or at least 44 years age old. And we also see that slightly more than a half of individuals participating in this survey are from higher or middle upper socioeconomic backgrounds. To give you some insight about how these figures compare with the wider UK population, we see that the cohort of participants to the survey are generally younger than the wider UK population, as well as we also see that there is a wider representation for individuals from lower socioeconomic background. To add to that, we also observe that a vast majority of individuals, about 8 in 10, are from white ethnicity. Around 1 in 4 individuals live in the southeast part of the UK, either London or the wider southeast region. And we also observe that around 6 in 10 individuals report no disability. After having provided this overview, it's now time to start with the findings from part one, where we will start by portraying the overall set of activities in which individuals are found to engage with. And I think it's interesting, the main interesting point to start with in this respect is to highlight that there are two main blocks of activities. There is a set of activities including watching TV on either commercial platforms like Amazon or more established broadcasters like BBC, as well as listening to popular music on streaming platforms. So these type of activities, these type of contents are generally quite popular in the population. Between 7 and 8 individuals in 10 engage with those type of contents. Alongside that, we also have then a wider set of contents that are less commonly spread in the UK population, and those concern activities including watching theatre and performing arts online, up to the creation and sharing of online contents. So in this case, we see that rates of participation are way lower when compared to other sort of more established activities. And we also observe that when it comes to more popular activities, we somehow observe homogeneous patterns of participation in the UK population. Whereas when it comes to type of contents that are less popular, we notice that younger cohorts are more likely to engage with this type of contents. Furthermore, consistently with these findings, we also find that the main motivation for individuals to engage with this content, with online culture, entertainment, relaxation, but also we find that younger individuals, for instance, have as one of their their motivation to engage with online culture in the search for diversity of contents. They want to engage with more online content online. And following from these first results, we also investigated and we also have insights about the span, how many activities individuals engage with. And we see that essentially more than half of individuals have somehow a limited engagement, no more than 4 activities. This could be appreciated by combining these 2 first bars. Whereas on the other hand, we have those that we defined as super engagers, those that engage with at least 7 activities, account for slightly more than 10% of the survey participants. These patterns of engagement with online culture are very much consistent, and this we think is interesting, with part of engagements with offline culture. So in this respect, engagement with culture online very much mimics engagement patterns with offline culture. We also uncover the fact that younger cohorts are more likely to be consuming a wider set of activities, and this is consistent with the previous findings I just presented, but also we find that individuals from higher socioeconomic background are also more likely to engage more widely with online culture. And also we saw that within those that again we define as super engagers, they are more likely to be from London, so this perhaps could proxy for factors like education, or and at the same time they might be coming from ethnic minorities. And finally, to complete this part, it's also important we also have evidence on what are the perceived most important needs. And we see that having more information is the main driver in order for participants, in order for UK individuals to diversify further their engagement. This is also true for individuals belonging to upper socioeconomic classes. On the other hand, we see that for individuals belonging to lower socioeconomic strata of society, things like equipment, resources, money, are an important reason to engage more with online culture. And alongside that, we also uncovered that for younger individuals, male respondents, we also notice the importance of digital skills and having a more diverse set of activities available in order to consume more culture online. And interestingly, alongside these questions around engagement, the survey also asked questions about individuals' perception around creativity and around their feeling of being or not digitally skilled. We see that quite consistently across age cohorts, a large part of the survey participants feel to have some or strong digital skills, around 8 in 10 individuals, although we observe noticeable differences when it comes to feeling very digitally skilled, where we observe substantial differences across age. It is also the case that individuals from higher socioeconomic background feels to have a greater availability of digital skills. On the other hand, individuals feels, especially those belonging to younger cohorts, feels to be very creative, around 8 in 10 individuals. But in this case, we see that age is a prominent factor in affecting in perceptions of self-creativity. Individuals that are 50 years age older, and we observe that just 6 in 10 individuals feel they are somewhat or very creative. Interestingly also, we can connect these 2 aspects by noticing that having digital skills seems to be connected with feeling more creative, have a greater perception of self-creativity. It's also the case that male respondents perceive themselves as more digitally skilled, but on the other hand, female individuals perceive themselves as being more creative than male counterparts. And further to that, we can also have a clue about the relationship between in-person and online engagement, which is the left part of this picture, where we notice that around 6 in 10 individuals feel that engaging with culture online is as important as engaging with in-person culture. But on the other hand, we also see that 1 in 3 individuals feel that in-person culture is still more important. Engaging with in-person culture still matters more. but also we find that there seems to be a connection with the perception and creativity. Those that do not perceive themselves as creative have a preference for in-person cultural engagement. And this is also the case for older cohorts of individuals. But at the same time, the survey also asks questions around individuals' plans or perceptions about their future engagement with online culture, which is the right plot. And we see that about half of the individuals think that their engagement will stay the same, but also around 1 in 3 individuals think that their engagement with online culture will increase over time. And this is especially the case for those that perceive themselves as being digitally skilled, and also for the younger cohorts. This is somehow consistently with the results and the findings presented so far. And to move towards the second part of part 1, and here we have some interesting figure about the behavioral patterns of individuals when it comes to subscriptions, to online culture, and to spending patterns. The darker green columns highlight current subscriptions across the survey respondents. And we could see that on one hand, we see that expectedly somehow, contents like movies, videos are the most subscribed. On the other hand, the survey interestingly asked questions about what would be the subscription plans of individuals if they had no financial constraints. These are the less stronger green areas, where we see that the interestingly finding in this case is that if individuals had no financial constraint, we would observe that activities like concert and live music streaming, as well as theater streaming, would be more highly subscribed by the individuals. And this is, I think, has quite substantial policy implication in order to, if institutions, if organizations were willing to promote further engagement. So in the case, that means that there is availability of individuals to be willing to subscribe for a less commonly used and subscribed type of contents. And also, for two specific parts, for two specific type of contents, the survey also asks questions about the individual's willingness to pay. When it comes, in both cases, we see that for both online performances, theater, dance, and so on, and for online art exhibitions, more than half of individuals are willing to spend some money. This share is higher when it comes to online performances, so more individuals are willing to spend some money, with the median expenditures being between 20 and 40 pounds. On the other hand, the share of individuals willing to spend some money for online exhibition is lower, but those individuals are willing to spend more money. The median individuals is willing to spend between 40 and 60 pounds. It's also the case that for both type of contents, older individuals, those feeling non-creative, and those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are less willing to spend any money, whereas those that demonstrate a limited engagement with online culture are also less likely to be willing to spend any money specifically for online art exhibition. And to conclude this first part, we report some findings around opinions, individuals' opinion on the contribution of online culture, on the societal contribution of online culture. And I think one interesting aspect that comes out of this set of questions is that whenever it comes to the perceived positive impact of online culture, there are individuals that seems to have strong opinions. About more than 8 in 10 individuals think that online culture agrees with the statement that online culture expresses people to new ideas, new art forms, and so on. Or in arts culture, online culture is capable to provide society-wide sharing of knowledge and creativity, down to the point in which more than 6 in 10 individuals think that online culture is capable to develop in a sense of community. On the other hand, when it comes to less positive impact of online culture with like making people less active with in-person activities, there is way less of a shared consensus across the survey participants. And this boils down to all of these dimensions considered. And this is now time to move to part 2 of this presentation, where we we will specifically report findings around the engagement of UK individuals with generative AI and in relation to culture. There are two main set of questions asking about individuals' engagement with generative AI. On one hand, one question specifically asks individuals whether they thought they had encountered generative AI somewhere over the last 12 months. And it looks like the findings says that about 1 in 2 individuals reported to have encountered the generative AI in relation to culture, although, and this will be very much evident when it comes to the second part of the findings, there are strong age differences. Engagement with generative AI currently seems to be more a feature of young cohorts of individuals. The most popular way, or the easiest way individuals engaged with or encountered the generative AI is through either social media or specific generative AI platforms, and this is somehow no surprise. But interestingly, we think it's also that there are opportunities, individuals also had opportunities to engage and encounter generative AI in physical spaces, in institutions like museums, galleries, theaters, libraries. And the most common ways in which individuals experienced and encountered generative AI was in relation to AI-generated artworks, AI-generated films, videos and clips, and also pieces of written work. Then there is a second question regarding individuals' engagement with the generative AI, and that's specifically asking whether individuals used generative AI tools. About 2 in 3 individuals said that they haven't, or at least they haven't consciously. Whereas we find that around slightly less than 1 in 3 individuals reportedly used generative AI-powered tools. Again, strong age differences, with the younger cohorts being more likely to have done so. And also this seems to be the case for male respondents and those from higher socioeconomic backgrounds. What did they use for? Those that reported engaging with generative AI tools did it mostly to create or generate images, pieces of writing, music, and other common type of cultural contents. But it's also interesting to see that the main motivations on one end pertains to individuals' curiosity to find out about this new technology, this new tool, but also they think is a way for them to express their own creativity or to express more widely themselves. It's also interesting to note that there is quite a uniform pattern of engagement when it comes to the frequency of using generative AI, where we have that essentially around 4 in 10 individuals seems to use generative AI tools on a weekly basis, either once a week, more than once a week, or on a daily basis. And on the other hand, it's interesting also to investigate the reasons why those individuals that reported not to engage, not to have used generative AI tools, why they didn't. And the main reason turns out to be the fact that they are just uninterested in using generative AI tools. On the other hand, it's also interesting to note that although these are the issues around quality and ethical concerns are not the main motivations driving individuals away from generative AI tools, these particular aspects are particularly prominent for younger cohorts of individuals. And going back to the fact that the main reason for not using Gen AI tools is the fact that is the lack of interest, at the same time, it looks also that at the current stage, individuals not only haven't used generative AI tools because they are not interested, but currently they also seem not to be interested in learning how to use generative AI tools. So this again may speak and may be of relevance for policies as long as they target further developments, further engagement in the population with these sort of tools. Then there are some questions asking individuals about a specific aspect concerning the use of generative AI. On one hand, individuals are asked about their opinion on whether arts and culture organizations should be actively engaged with the AI. And 1 in 4 think they should. And even in this case, this seems to be more relevant for younger individuals and those from higher socioeconomic backgrounds and male respondents. Whereas though about 1 in 2 individuals think that arts and culture organizations should not be using AI, the main motivations for that mostly lie around aspects involving human creativity, the preservation and the sheltering of a human artistic expression, but also issues around creative work. So it's important, the individuals think that it's important for arts and culture organizations to support human artists. On the other hand, for among those that think that arts and culture organizations should engage with AI, interestingly, we see that in a number of cases, older individuals recognize a wider set of reasons why they should. From purely economic reasons, like lowering the cost of productions, to aspects involving the improvement or the widening of participations. Linked to that, another question also asks about copyright. On one hand, in the survey asking to the UK participant whether AI companies should be paying for copyrighted cultural content. A strong majority of individuals, more than 2 in 3, thinks they should. And again, one of the main reasons for why they think so is about the preservation, the sheltering of human creativity, and again, in order to allow individuals, allow creators and creative workers to get some remuneration for their work. On the other hand, the survey also asked whether AI-generated content should receive protection. And interestingly, we see that more than half of individuals think that yes, that should be the case, at least to some extent. But this is more likely to be the opinion of younger cohorts, and whereas those belonging to older cohorts of individuals, on the other hand, feel that AI companies should be paying for copyrighted work. And linking to that, the survey very interestingly asked questions about the perception, the opinion of individuals around the value of human creativity. And this very much connects to the findings I just shown, because 8 in 10 individuals think that human created art is more valuable than AI-generated art. And it's interesting also to notice what are the perceived drawbacks from generative AI. Lack of emotions, issues around originality, authenticity are perceived as to be the most important, although there are also differences when it comes to age patterns and also when it comes to those that feel themselves as creative. On the other hand, and this is somehow aligns with previous findings, when thinking around the benefits of generative AI, individuals think that recognize the important contribution this could have to foster and to expand to expand creativity, human creativity, so as a leverage for that, but also as a way to allow individuals to express themselves again. And going back to the point about the value of human creative art, individuals again recognize the importance of human expertise, human skills, human effort as a main driver for why they value human created art. And to conclude, this part of the presentation, here are again a set of questions around individuals' opinion regarding the societal contribution of arts, of generative AI in this case. And even in this case, we find that there is a set of questions where there are way stronger opinion around the societal impact of generative AI. One of these, for instance, concerns the fact that individuals think that because of generative AI, it would be harder for artists to make a living. Again, this very much aligning with the findings already presented, but they also perceive that issues around authorships, originality are quite relevant with following the advent of generative AI. On the other hand, there is way less consensus around what could be the impact of AI in relation to diversity, cultural diversity, or perhaps on issues around democratization of cultural production. And so to conclude this presentation, the main findings that we have presented are very, on one end, speak about the variety of engagement that we find with online culture for the case of UK individuals. Individuals engage with a variety of content. Although there are differences, certain contents are way more popular, and these are more established type of contents like TV, films, and so on. On the other hand, we also find that certain contents where perhaps there is less widespread engagement are also such that individuals would be willing to engage with, but resources, more informations are important dimensions in order to widen individuals' engagement. We find that age and socioeconomic conditions are generally driver of diverse engagement across the variety of fundings investigated. And interestingly, when it comes about opinions on the impact, on the societal impact of online culture, we see that there are stronger opinions when it comes to the pros. So individuals are more likely to recognize the positive contribution of online culture, whereas less generalized consensus is present when it comes to less positive contribution. 1 in 2 individuals are reported to have somehow engaged with generative AI. And this is the main finding, I would say, to start that concerning the second part of this presentation. However, we find strong age differences when it comes to engagement with generative AI. And at the same time, we also find that reasons like around curiosity, the discovery, but also the capability of express individual selves are main drivers to engage with generative AI. These engagement mostly happen through social media or specific platforms like generative AI platforms. But on the other hand, at the current stage, the individuals do not think that arts and cultural organizations should actively engage with generative AI. Mostly, the reason for this lies around the importance that individuals attach to arts, to human creativity, to creative work, and also they think that there are concerns around generative AI in relation to culture, concerning emotional aspects, but also issues around originality, authorship, and the like, also including creative work. And that concludes today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for such a comprehensive report on the survey findings. Very helpful. Okay, before we are going to switch to the Japanese presentation. Before we move on, if there's any question regarding for clarification purposes, yes, okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So that I have a very basic question about this survey. So when I'm quite curious about the section about self-reported creativity and digital skills. So that when you make them respondents answer this question, did you give any specific examples, explanation about the digital skills or what does digital skill mean in this context? That's a very basic. Is it about consumption or production, or I'm quite curious about the common understanding about this term, digital skills. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the question, Taka. So essentially, the approach chosen in designing the survey by both Professor Kawashima and Professor Lee was just about to let individuals define themselves, whether they feel they have digital skills or whether they feel themselves as being creative. So it was a very somehow unstructured, but in a sense, unstructured approach, leaving individuals to express their confidence or less with both creativity and digital skills.
Okay, well, the same applies to words such as diversity and creativity, originality, etc. All the words, we don't give any specific definitions. Okay. Right. Okay, so we move into the second presentation by the Japanese team, done by Professor Yagi and myself. And unlike the UK report, we take a slightly different approach. And because it's such a long questionnaire, we didn't feel we can cover everything in one presentation, but instead, Professor Yagi is going to discuss some analytical results focusing on specific aspects of the survey. And I will be talking about the UK-Japan comparison in a descriptive way. Okay, Professor.
Yeah. Today, we would like to present the result of analysis And in part one, we analyze the descriptive property of Japanese survey result. And then we move to the analytical consideration by using regression analysis. So firstly, we will show the result of the online activities engaged by age group. And age group differences are relatively small, except for TV program. This is here. And reading manga and games. These items, in these items, we could find the age differences. And this is a motivation and by age group. So in this figure, we cannot find the big age differences except for learning. This is the point to learn more about subject I'm interested in. And elder age group, selected this question. And this means as one ages, the motivation of using online is to learn something. And this is the number selection. Question one. Question one is a field and genres which are used by online services. That is a variety of online activities. And the regression result shows us with age, the number of activities decreases. And as household income increases, the number of activities increases. And gender has no effect. And married individuals are engaged in less activities. Then this is the regression result. And the result shows that with age, willingness to pay decreases. And as household income increases, WTP increases. Men has a lower WTP, and married individual has lower WTP. The next is the determinant of WTP for online theater. The result shows that with age, willingness to pay decreases. Household income increase, WTP increases. There is no difference in WTP between men and women. And there is no difference in WTP between married and unmarried individuals. And next is the determinant of the degree of advantages of, and this is number of selected items, the advantages of AI. And the result shows that with age, the number of selections of merits decrease. Household income does not affect the number of selections. Men tend to select advantages more. And there is no difference between married and unmarried. And the next is number of selections as disadvantages die. And the result shows that age does not affect the number of selection. Household income has positive effect on the number of selection. There is no difference between males and females. Married individuals have chosen less. So we conducted factor analysis. The left side is questions in question 9. And this is result of the factor analysis. And we could generate 3 variables. That is called 3 factors. And the yellow marked items correlated strongly with the questionnaire. And we interpreted the meaning of variables. The first factor is positive effect. The second is negative in cultural aspect. And the third variable is a negative factor in health. And so, firstly, we examined what factors determines the value of effect, positive effect. That is question 9 factor. And question 5 is the degree of diversity in online activities. And question 9 expresses degree of digital skill of the respondents. And this result shows that those who find diverse content available online and those with digital skills tend to choose a larger number of positive effects of culture online. And this is a negative effect, the second factor. And we could find the result that for negative effect of online culture, different age group diverges. And for example, the degree of diverse affect negative effect negatively in younger generation, while in elder generations, the degree of diversity has positive effect, negative effect in Q9 factor. And so question 7 is the degree of digital skill. And in younger generations, this has a positive effect, while this has a negative effect in elder group. So there is a big difference among age groups. So this is negative effect in health. So for online cultural negative effect on health, different age groups differs, especially the effect of the degree of digital skill in younger generation. It has positive effect, while in elder age group, this has a slightly negative. And so this is the determinant of the number of advantages chosen. This is a very important figure. Maybe we want to focus on the result of this figure. And as an explanatory variable, we select age, annual income, number of online activities. This is generated from question 1. And diversities and online skill and male dummy, marriage dummy. And this is a factor generated from question 9. And this is positive effect. The second is negative in culture. The third is negative in health. The last one is a very important variable. To examine affect the experience of using AI in creative activities, the number of selections in advantages of AI. So this figure shows that this question 16, that is the question on the experience in using AI in creating something. And the number increases as the number of genre in using increases. So this variable represents the degree of using AI in creating cultural arts. And we found that the effect of the experience in using in creative activity has the strongest impact, strongest effect on the number of selection advantages of AI. And similarly, we we conducted the regression analysis for the selection disadvantages AI. Yeah, in this figure, we can find that the degree of experiences using AI in creating activity has strongest effect on the number of selection advantages. The next strongest factor variable is number of online activities. Maybe we can examine the implication of the result with considering two results, that is the number of advantages and number of disadvantages. And maybe you will find the similar tendencies in these two results. Firstly, the degree of degree of usage has the strongest effect. And also, we can find that the number of online activity also has a strong effect. And this is Q9 positive factor. That is positive evaluation of online activities. And this also has a strong positive effect on the number of selections in advantages of AI. This also shows that Q9 positive factor has a strong positive effect. So from these two figures, we can say that as one knows about online or activities, one can understand merit and demerit of in deep manner. So the result shows that positive and negative aspect of AI understood by the people who quite familiar with using AI. And the third figure is the determinant of attending AI exhibition. This also has a similar result. Number of activities, Q9 positive factor, and the degree of experiencing AI, those three variables has the strongest effect on the determination attending AI exhibitions. So from these analysis, maybe we can interpret the result as firstly, people who appreciate the positive impact of online culture are often more critical of AI because they have invested in preserving the distinctive features of the online world. They recognize that while AI has potential benefit, it also poses risks that could compromise freedom, creativity, and openness that they value. Thus, they are more likely to scrutinize AI's limitations and advocate for responsible use to protect the integrity of online space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. The relationship between the use of the experience of using AI for creating something and their attitudes towards AI is very, very interesting. We were so excited to find this correlation, and we actually worked this morning on this. Right. Okay, let me move on to the discussion on the findings compare the UK and Japan. And before I begin to analyze, I'm just showing the age distribution between the UK and Japan. As you can see, the Japanese population is slightly older than the UK one. And before I move on to discuss the comparison of the UK findings and the Japanese findings, I thought I would explain a little bit about the background of as culture in Japan, because for the sake of international audience. Well, Japan has had sort of Western traditional culture such as classical music, opera, dance, ballet, and museums as prestigious arts and culture since the late 19th century, and they still dominate the Japanese culture scene. But at the same time, we have our traditional culture, traditional arts and performing arts, such as kabuki, no, burak, and so on. So they coexist. And that creates a bit of a confusion for many Japanese. But anyway, other things I want to highlight here is that unlike in the UK, where class is a topic, is something that people are really conscious about, and culture and the arts highly connected to the class thing. And class is reproduced by the use of cultural capital. That's the theory, at least. Whereas in Japan, it's a little bit more complicated. People are conscious about income diversity, but we don't really talk about culture. Sorry, we don't really talk about class. Culture's contribution to the reproduction of different strata in society. Another thing that is important for us to know in advance is that Japanese cultural policy is minimal. The funding level is pretty low compared to other countries like shown here. Japan's contribution to culture from the public expenditure is pretty low. And this table shows the same is true for the UK. Not quite sure. Yeah, it's arguable because what's included in the cultural expenditure depends widely. But anyway, we know that France, at least, and South Korea are high spenders for the arts and culture, at least compared to Japan. So that's the point. But despite the low level of public funding, we have a lot of artistic activities professionally undertaken or by amateurs as well. And we have as many as 9 professional orchestras in Tokyo. Some of them are well funded by NHK, for example, or by a newspaper company, and the rest independent. They struggle to self-fund, but still they survive in one way or another. So that's amazing. From my point of view. And there are a lot of opera performances and opera companies without in this country, the tradition of so-called opera is relatively short. Nevertheless, there are good opera singers and they do performances. And there are many museums around the country as well. And when it comes to more commercial media and entertainment industries, Japan has the 3rd largest market in the world. The US and China are so exceptional, so we can forget about them. But Japan has a 3rd largest, still the largest market in the world. For example, when it comes to film, Japan has a 3rd largest market, and in recorded music, Japan is the 2nd largest, followed by the UK. So you can see it's quite a large market, which means that there are a lot of activities produced and consumed by the Japanese population. And Japanese markets, the film and music and so on, basically dominated by Japanese content. It's not that we import a lot from the United States. We have no protective measures, especially for the Japanese content. It's just free market society. And yet, people seem to love Japanese origin content. So let's have a look at the film market. It's been like this, that there are a lot of films produced in Japan, and the market prefers the Japanese content to Hollywood, for example, Hollywood and other things. And I must say that this figure, most of the Japanese films are so-called anime. So live action movies as well, loved as well by the Japanese public, but the majority is Japanese anime. For music, this is about physical, which means CDs, only physical stuff. It's surprising, but the really majority of the music produced in Japan by Japanese artists, and meaning that the public prefers the Japanese music to so-called Western music. It used to be very different, like in the 1980s and in the 1970s, when US rock and UK rock and pop music were more popular. But nowadays, people in Japan prefer Japanese musicians. And I said the figure previously shown was about physical, and this is another surprising figure. Compared to the rest of the world, the Japanese music market is dominated by the sale of CD and other physical stuff. So streaming, in relation to today's presentation, more important important is that the streaming is still minor, and younger people tend to think it must be the majority, but it's not true. It's still physical domination within the music market. So that's very different from the global trend. And another thing I want to say is that Japan is a big country for television, free-to-air terrestrial broadcasting. And since the 1950s, we've always had two NHK channels like BBC One and BBC Two. One is more comprehensive, the other is a little bit more educational, including scientific stuff and so on, or history or documentaries and things like that. So there are two channels by NHK. And also, we've had 4 national major networks, or 5, depending on how you count. So it's like the combination of the UK or European model and the American model, and nobody pays for this except for the annual fee that or monthly pay we pay for NHK, like the BBC subscription fee. But otherwise, people are so used to having a huge amount of television content without payment. So even though the television or broadcasting was digitized by 2012, people haven't changed their behavior and maybe less and less time. That's very true. Nevertheless, we take it for granted that television is there as the entertainment media, entertainment and educational information media, and it has a large presence. And I created this table to show the importance of television in Japan. As you see, this is advertising spend. And I'm actually a little bit surprised that more than 75% of the advertising fee goes into online advertising. Oh, of course, that's a big thing, but each count and etc. is really a little money, but as it accumulates, it becomes large. But Japan, as you see, for the Japanese figures, traditional television, excluding video on demand, commands 25%. That's an enormous amount of money. So television companies are still comfortable in a way. At least those stations in Tokyo, based in Tokyo, are okay. More problem arises when it comes to local stations, but still you can see from this table that Japan has a big television culture. I'm going to skip this. And another surprising figure here is that the Japanese experience of AI in general is pretty low compared to other major countries in the world. China is sort of exceptional, I think, but the US, nearly half of the population has experienced AI in their work, perhaps, or in some way, not necessarily for cultural creation, so that's different, but still, it's a big figure. And the UK, about 40% of the population are using AI for a variety of purposes. So that makes a lot of difference with the Japanese population, and I think that is going to be reflected on our findings that follow. Okay, in general, I think that Japanese populations, the findings from the surveys in the UK and Japan, show that the Japanese population is less active compared to the UK public when it comes to online engagement in cultural activities. I mean, we must note that the respondents who are included in this survey have been engaged in at least 3 activities in the last 12 months. For example, they might have seen popular music video on YouTube. They might have seen some video on Netflix and so on. So at least 3, okay? But in general, it seems to me that the UK public, UK respondents at least, are more active in a variety of online content, online activities than the Japanese respondents. And here is a difference between the self-confidence amongst the UK public and the Japanese public as to their creativity. We ask, are you creative? And people in Japan are less sure about their own creativity. I actually think the respondents are active, but still they are modest. This is a very typical tendency of the Japanese survey, whereas the UK public seems to be more confident about their creativity, which I think is interesting. When it comes to digital skills, the same pattern is shown here. The Japanese tend to say, well, I'm not sure if I have enough digital skills. But of course, they do have digital skills. I say they don't engage in various cultural online activities. So from our point of view as survey designers, I think they are good enough. They have good enough skills, but the respondents were a little bit more uncertain about their level of skills. Okay, so the experience of earning from online content and experience of earning from creating something and putting that onto an online platform, then the UK has more people, more experienced people at least. And encounter with AI-produced work, more people in the UK have seen, oh, this is an AI-created visual image or something like that, whereas in Japan it was less than half. And this I think is an important figure. In the UK, this is about the experience of using AI for creation. And again, the UK public, the UK respondents have had more experiences than their Japanese counterparts. And here I need to be quick from now. Here is their views and opinions. And I'm not sure yet, I don't know yet how to interpret the differences from here now. But there are some differences and some similarities as well. Okay, let's move on. Okay, needs for diversifying online engagement. The Japanese would say, well, time is crucial. Time prevents me from encountering more diverse content. And I think that makes sense. The Japanese tend to work longer and busy. And the married individuals, married people tend to engage less in less activities. And that makes sense because they are busy with rearing children and doing household works and so on. So time is the biggest factor for the Japanese, and I don't understand why it's not a major issue for the UK public, but it doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to be a big issue in the UK. And this is another interesting one, because we asked about government's policies for online activities or enhancing online activities of culture, and which we showed 10 to 12 choices for people to choose from, and people could tick as many as they wanted. And it seems to me that the Japanese results the Japanese responses actually reflect the government's policy of today. The government has been saying, oh, we should promote our content overseas and get more interest from overseas people and get them to come and spend money in Japan to boost the Japanese economy and so on. So-called Cool Japan strategy. It really reflects that policy is really reflected in the Japanese respondents' preferences. It seems like the policy of the government is well communicated to the public, or the public preference is reflected in the policy of the government. Either way, it's interesting. And also catalog of heritage, meaning archiving, making digital archives of museum collections and so on. So that's another preferred method for government policy by the respondents. Okay, let me continue. When it comes to the preference between human creation and AI created content, well, the UK results are very consistent and very clear. People prefer and support human creativity, whereas the Japanese respondents are a little bit more uncertain or diverse in terms of their support. So it's the more than 25% say they support neither. They don't know. It's not they don't know, but they see some points in human activities, but also AI created products as well. They see some points in AI creation. The value of human creation. Again, the UK respondents are very supportive of individual artists, and they seem to appreciate the time and efforts and skills invested into into creative activities, whereas for the Japanese, when it comes to individual artists or support for individual artists, the Japanese respondents tend to be less supportive, less sure about supporting individual artists. So they don't really prefer this, and instead other advantages, values are recognized. Okay, drawbacks of generative AI. Yeah, again, there are some differences between the UK and Japan. I'm not sure how to interpret this. What's interesting is here, it's the most preferred or the most popular drawback pointed out by the Japanese respondents is a problem or issue of copyright thing. Okay, another slide is about the influence of generative AI. Again, there are some similarities, but also differences, and I'm not yet able to explain or interpret what's behind. So this is only for the purposes of referring to the difference. Arts organizations' use of AI. For the Japanese, efficiency and productivity are pointed out as a third most important purpose of using AI, whereas in the UK, not much. Future of AI, again, there are some differences, but I think I like to come to my conclusion, and this is not really concluding remark, but only tentative findings that I have drawn so far. At least for the Japanese, it's still difficult to interpret the results. The UK findings are very consistent, very clear, and easy to explain, perhaps, or easier to explain than the Japanese ones, whereas the Japanese results a bit difficult still. So that's one thing. And overall, I think there is a strong optimism about the use of AI amongst the Japanese respondents, and trust, but also trust in human creativity, perhaps. So it's okay to have AI, and we are not threatened. That's the kind of feelings I think that we can get from the survey results. AI. Some of the respondents that I have spoken to personally say, well, AI is only a tool. It's something that we can, with AI, we can do more. We can make creative things more easily and more efficiently, but we are not threatened or we are not replaced by the AI. That's a kind of the feeling that we can get, but I think we need more analysis, further analysis in the near future. Okay, thank you very much.